Woke up at 5:30 this morning for the first time in my life. So yes, that means that I do not have kids yet, and that I'll have to get used to that. Can we thank Pastor Kevin for putting this all together this weekend? You know, he didn't have to do this. This isn't what he gets paid to do, but I know from being around his amazing children, specifically his son who works with my husband and I, that this is one passionate couple. And I just want to thank you for putting this all together so that we do have this opportunity to grow. That was quite the intro you gave me. Wow. That is no pressure indeed. You mentioned that Pastor Bob has been a leader longer than you. I'm proud to say that Pastor Bob has been a leader longer than I've been alive. So you got me beat in that as well today. Like you mentioned, I work at the Bible college that I did attend, and my husband and I are the young adult pastors at the Mill Plain campus of City Bible Church. And so our world is college students. Our world is young adults, and we absolutely love it. We are a bit of a unique situation in that we are leading millennials. And yes, you guessed it right, we are in fact millennials. And so we're right smack dab in the middle of that age group. And so it's a really fun time. It's a really interesting experience, and we're just having the time of our life doing what God's called us to do. I do work specifically with the interns, and one of those interns who I've had probably the most impressive intern I've had come through in the past 8 years has to be Cameron Truitt, who is Pastor Kevin's son. I'm telling you, there's a lot of talented people, and I think, especially you work at a Bible college, you kind of see they call it the cream of the crop. You know, they come through and we've been doing this for years, and you see a lot of really talented people come through, and there comes a point in time where you just stop being impressed by talent. And you start to really be impressed by heart. And I just love that is what you've imparted to your children, because that is the most impressive thing. When they're talented and they still value heart more than talent, that's just, in my book, that just tops it all. So I just wanted to brag on him really quick. I know he probably hates that. I'm sorry. But yes, like Pastor Kevin said, he asked me to speak about millennials today. And my goal today is that we'd all learn something, that we take a few moments and study the nuances of this generation and of this age group. And as we take a look into this generation, into what makes them tick, what makes them them, that we would all grow collectively. And that's what I'm excited to do today. Now, growth is this funny concept because it's really exciting in concept, and it's really challenging in reality.
That's right.
And it's usually not comfortable, it's usually not easy, but it is always worth it. And more importantly, I believe it's what God expects of us. Not just as leaders, but just as Christians. Just like he said, that growth is just a part of Christianity. And so I'm really hoping that today, I'm really expecting that we are all, just by looking specifically at millennials and how to reach them, that we would all collectively grow. Now, what do I mean by millennials? Millennials are a generation that was born between 1981 and 1997, which means the people in your church who are 20 to 36. Age 20 to 36. That generation before that is Gen X, 1965 to 1980. How many of you guys are Gen Xers? Raise your hand. Before that, you've got the baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. There's some spirit. And I don't know if we have anyone, but before that we have the silent generation, 1928 to 1945. Pastor Bob. Not so silent generation. To give us some context there. So millennials. Now I noticed there was no cheering for the millennials. Do we have any millennial leaders here? There we go. Okay. They probably didn't hear me because they were on their cell phones. True to millennial form, right? But a lot has changed in the past 30 years. A lot has changed during this time that we millennials have had to grow up. In the 80s and the 90s, there was a time where if you wanted to look at the picture that you took, you had to drive to Walgreens.
That's right.
You had to take the film roll out of your camera, you had to submit it, and then you usually had to wait 3 days to then open up do you guys remember this? How excited it was, like Christmas morning when you'd get your pictures and you'd start flipping through all of them to see, and you wouldn't know until 3 weeks after your vacation if any of those even turned out.
That's right.
Like that was life. There was a time when I remember waiting for my mom to pick me up after school. I didn't know, or youth group for that matter, I didn't know if she remembered. I didn't know if she was alive still. I didn't know if she was on her way, and we were all just okay with it. Like we didn't know where everybody was at every moment of the day, and it didn't even faze us. Here's a crazy one. There was a time where if you did not go up to somebody who you didn't know, introduce yourself, get to know them, get their phone number, then go back home to look at your paper hard copy calendar, then go back to contact them, we would never be able to build a relationship.
That's right.
There was a time when effort was needed to build relationship with someone and see pictures of all of their children.
That's right.
Like you had to get to know someone at one point to see pictures of your children. Some of you wish that was still the case because you'd like to see a lot less pictures of children. The craziest one is this. There was a time when you did not know if somebody was engaged, pregnant, dating, broken up, unless they told you in person. We know all of this now about people who we've never even met. We know the gender of their baby. Do we know them? Have we met them? No, but we saw their album on Facebook at their gender reveal party.
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot has changed in the last 30 years. A lot has changed for millennials. And what does this mean? What does this mean about how they've grown up? Well, first is this. One of the things that's changed the most is the amount of technology and data and information.
That's right.
A recent study came out that there has been more data, information that has been produced in the last 2 years than ever in the history of the human race. We have more knowledge and information than we know what to do with, and it's all in our back pocket. So what I want to do this morning, with the brief time that I have, is I want to share a few things. First, I want to share what does that mean? What do all of these changes mean for millennials? Give you a bit of context of their world. You'll notice that I'm going to switch back and forth. Sometimes I'm going to refer to millennials as them. Usually when I'm talking about a negative aspect, I'll be like, oh, those millennials. When I say something positive, I'll say, us millennials. You'll notice I switch back and forth. And after that, I want to share with you guys a few defining qualities about millennials. Because of their context, what makes them tick, what makes them them. And then last, I want to share with you guys 4 leadership requests from millennials. These are real requests from real millennials to the church and to church leaders. We're going to end with that, and then after that, I'd like to go into a bit of Q&A. If you guys are willing or open to that. I know we have Q&A at the very end, but if you do have specific questions about millennials, there's a good chance I could answer it just being myself, or I could answer it from also leading a group of young adults as well. And so first, to start, what does this mean to be a millennial? Well, first it means this. We grew up when the internet was created. In other words, as we evolved, the world evolved too. Now, I know that the world's always evolving, but at an extremely rapid pace, we watched the world change. So when I was 8 years old, I would do my homework on a typewriter. Like, I used a typewriter, and then when I was 12, I sent an email. And so, can we give a hand for Cameron? This is not out of character at all. I'm not even surprised. Thank you, Cameron. I didn't ask him to do that, by the way. That's just, if you know Cameron, you know he just does stuff like that. And so, for millennials, change happens very, very quick. It's the only world we've ever known. And if you ask most millennials, they expect it to happen even quicker. Change isn't fast enough for us. Like, really, I have to wait 2 seconds for the site to load? What do you, like, that's ridiculous, because we don't know waiting. We don't know patience. We don't know boredom. There was a time in life when people were bored. Think about it. Boredom is a foreign concept for us because we constantly have a distraction. And for us, it's not even happening quick enough. Second is this: we have watched social media take over the world. Like I said, we went from a time where, yeah, you did have to get your pictures in Walgreens to even see your own life, to now you see everyone's life all the time, and you know what they're always doing. One parent said that having a teenager in this generation is like having your kid at a party 24/7 that you're not invited to. There was a time where when your kid was home, they were home, right? When they were with you, they were with you. That's not the case anymore. We saw phones go from just being phones to going to smartphones. And last, we saw the power of an idea and the change that can happen on the world. And we believe that our ideas can do the same thing. We watched Mark Zuckerberg go from a random college student to the man who has literally changed the way most of the human race functions day to day. He was just one of us. We saw LinkedIn start. We saw Google start. We saw some random guy, get this, say, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we turn all of our homes, why don't we rent them out like hotels, like hostels? Some of you may have heard, it's called Airbnb. Yeah. And some crazy idea about renting out your bedroom as a hostel is now has a net worth of $25 billion. We saw that happen. And so for us, we've seen the world put a very high value on creativity and innovation. And because of that, we expect the church to do the same. Now, mind you, we're also the trophy generation. We got a trophy for doing absolutely nothing. And we also expect the church to do the same. Now, I am not telling you to give all of your young adults in your ministry a trophy, but you should be wary of that or be ready for that. We have a very high value on innovation, on creativity. Most millennials would say that if someone does not honor that or honor their ideas, then they would be a toxic relationship in their life. So that's a little bit of context as far as the world that we grew up in. A few defining qualities about millennials. Now I'm going to start with some good news, okay? Contrary to popular belief, millennials are actually very cause-driven and very ethically motivated. One study predicted, actually, that millennials would become the most civic-minded generation with a strong sense of community, both local and global. Now, local and global, those are buzzwords for us leaders, right? We think of the church, right? We're like, okay, great. And it is true. The majority of millennials will now buy their products based on what the product stands for. Great example of that is Tom's shoes, right? A horrible shoe. Not even, really, it's not cool. It's not a cute shoe. It's not a great look. Offers no support. It's going to wear out after 3 times of wearing them. And I mean, 5 years ago, every millennial had one. Why? Because if you bought a pair, they'd give a pair to some kid in Africa. And for us, that was enough. This kind of shaped our thinking. A lot of millennials won't buy Nike. You know, they won't buy certain brands because of what it represents. They're very cause-oriented, cause-driven. And this translated into everything, from the products they buy to the way that they approach church. I'll get into that in my next point. So that's a good thing, right? Do millennials just care about themselves? Are they what people say, the me generation? Yeah. Yeah, they might be a little bit more narcissistic than their parents. But on the same token, they really want to give their life to something that matters. For them, it's kind of all that matters. So what does that mean for you? Well, when you have those young adults in your church, for them, it's not enough to be busy. They have to know that what they're doing matters. Now, this is often why they're unemployed. Because they'd rather do their passion, right, than, God forbid, do a job I don't believe in, make money just to pay the bills. Oh, what am I? That's Chinese torture for them. Now, again, there's pros and cons, but they have this deep, deep desire to do something that matters. And it needs to matter ethically. It needs to change the world. Everybody wants to work for a nonprofit. And again, there's pros and cons to this. A lot of this leads to, what we call delayed adolescence. Gosh, what was it? 20, 30 years ago, at 24, you had 3.25 kids, a mortgage, and you were 10 years into your career. At that age is now moved to the average age to get married is now 28 years old. At 28 years old, we are not married. We don't know what we're doing. We haven't found our career because we are so consumed with doing something that fulfills us in every area of our life. Now, this is a good and bad, right? There's pros and cons to this, but know that this is one of the things that is our driving force. A second is they think about money very different. Enough to take note of. According to one survey, 3 in 4 millennials would rather spend money on an experience or an event than to buy something. They want to create memories during concerts and vacations, and then, of course, they want to Instagram about it so that they can brag to all their friends about the memory that they made. But what does this mean for you? What does this mean for your church? This means that it is very challenging to get millennials behind a fundraiser to purchase something. You've probably already experienced this. There's a good chance if you're raising money for a new sound system, you're not going to have a young adult give $1 to it. But if you raise money to help that sex trafficking victim so that her kids can go to college, they'll liquidate all of their entire, all their savings, and they'll just drop it in the offering. If it means that some sex trafficking victim can have a new pair of shoes, they'll do whatever it takes. Now, this is very, very different. I grew up in a church where, I still remember this, I was pretty young, but I remember we were going through a building project and this big fundraiser, and the church was trying to raise money so that we would pay in cash money to fund our new building. We had a guest speaker who came through, and none of us knew who he was. And he came in, and he looked at the church, and he says, I want each of you to give $3,000. One for the Father, one for the Son, and one for the Holy Spirit. Now, you think that's crazy, but they all did it. Wow. I'm talking like thousands of people were like, well, yeah, one for the Father, one for the Son, one for the Holy Spirit. That makes sense to me. Here you go. I mean, we have stories. I know these people. I talked to these people. They were like, well, if that's what he asked, that's what we're supposed to do. I mean, yeah, there's a trinity. I better give $3,000. People gave the down payment of their homes so that the church could have a new building. And that's just not going to fly anymore. Now, does that mean that millennials aren't generous? No. That is a misconception. The misconception is that they're selfish, they're poor, and they're not generous. Well, the second one is true. They are very poor. That is very true. They don't have careers and they have tons of student loan debt. But they do want to give. They just want to believe in the cause. And so, am I telling you, hey, you better not try to raise money for a sound system? No, I'm not. But if you can attach whatever it is that you're wanting to, if it's a fundraising thing, if it's just simply talking about money, right? The one thing no one wants to do. In our church right now, we've kind of revisited this concept in a really big way of really training our church. We have a pretty young church, and our pastor, Mark, our senior pastor, really believes that we need, even if it's uncomfortable, we need to talk to people about the importance of being generous. We need to remind people that the Bible talks about money more than, or Jesus talks about money more than any other subject that he touched on. He talks about money. But when we do, and when we do encourage our church to be generous, if you can attach a cause, if you can show them why it matters, you don't just give for the sake of the Trinity. Here's why it does matter. Here's the difference that we do want to make. Here's people that we do want to reach. You're going to have your young adults behind you, 100%. Number 3, they have a very high value for what's genuine and authentic. I'm actually going to get to that later. So just hang on to that one. And number 4 is this, for defining qualities about millennials. This could technically, I suppose, be considered bad news, but I don't really think it is. They are detached from institutions, and they are networked with friends. They are anti-institution. Now, that doesn't just mean anti-church. This is in every area. They boycott the Walmarts of the world. They boycott the Starbucks of the world. Yeah, right. That corporate, are you kidding me? They want to go to the mom and pop. They don't even care if it's good. They just don't want to do the corporate thing. They want to shop at a co-op. They want to grow their own coffee beans. They're very anti-corporation. And unfortunately, this does translate over to the church. They don't like your bylaws. They don't like your church government. They don't like your structure. They don't want to be systematized. And I think it's really easy, it's really tempting, even for Dustin and I, to kind of fall into the pragmatics of it and try and cater to this tendency and be like, oh yeah, no, we're just a community. We're just doing life together, which is true, right? But I think one thing, when I think of the question, okay, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for church leaders who are trying to lead a generation that is anti-institution when the church is in fact an institution, right? We have a guy at our church who always is like, hey, the church is a company. And I think he says it just to kind of get under everyone's skin. He's yeah, it's a company. It's a business. Got to run like a business. And he's our friend. He kind of just likes to kind of step on people's toes. But I think instead of bending or leaning in just to please everyone, hey, no, we're not. No, we don't even have bylaws. No, we're just a community. We are just about community. I don't think we need to apologize for structure. What I think we need to do is we need to come back and remind young adults what Scripture says about the church. Yes. Hey, you may like structure or you may not, but this is the bride of Christ. You may like it or you may not, but this is the vehicle that God is using to reach the world. So I apologize. You don't like that we have an eldership team and they're set in and we have to vote on them. But this is the institution. This is the vehicle that Christ is using to reach the world. And we'd like you to come along with us. And yes, of course, we're first a community, right? We are a collective group of believers that are living life together to reach the world. And potentially, if you like, yes, go ahead and use the buzzwords. Use the word community. Use the phrase doing life together. I will say this, though. I do think there is actually a good part to that. And that is, millennials will not go to church for the sake of going to church. They won't. Now, my parents were not this way. My parents were the best. They were never, pastors or leaders, but they were the best Christians you ever saw. They both have the flu. They have Lyme's disease. They'd still be up. They'd be early to church. And there's 4 girls in my family. All 4 of us would have matching outfits on, and my mom's hair would be perfect. And they'd be there at 8 a.m., and they would not miss a Sunday, right? How many of you guys came out of that generation? You haven't missed church in 45 years. Okay, millennials are not this way. They do not put a high value on church attendance. They do put a high value, however, on church relationships. And so they're not going to go if they don't have relationships. Now, like anything, that's a pro and a con. What that means is if you can get them in, if you can get them with real relationship, they'll stick. They may come for preaching, but they'll stay for relationship. They don't need to stay for preaching anymore. They have every preacher on podcast in their phone. They can listen to anyone they want at any time they want. So for us, that's a good thing. We don't have to be the best preacher in the entire world. What we do have to do is we have to create real Acts 2 biblical community. That's what they want. And I am actually encouraged by that, because I think that is the church getting closer to what it's meant to be.
Amen.
And so with that, I'm going to end with this. I want to end with 4 leadership requests from millennials. Now, obviously, I am a millennial, but what I wanted to do is, I was actually curious, leading them myself. I asked real people, real millennials from every end of the age bracket, from the 20-year-old to the 36-year-old, from different churches, different contexts, married, single, different church backgrounds, denominations, and it was really funny. A lot of them were very, very similar, and I got quite a few. And I narrowed it down to a few that I saw that came up the most, and also the ones that I resonated the most with myself. And the first one I'll give you is this. We'd rather identify with you than be impressed by you. More than anything, millennials just want to be able to identify with their leaders. I do think this is good news. We don't need to worry about impressing our young adults with how great we're the next John Maxwell leader, or how great our preaching is, or how awesome our programs are. Yes, those are all great things, and I'm not saying we need to stop giving those, high value and not, making them excellent. But more than anything, if they can identify with a leader, it means the world to them. I heard someone say once, I don't want the perfect leader. I just want a leader who really loves me. And I don't know about you guys, but if you look back into your life and you think, who changed, what person, and I want you to really think about this, what leader made the biggest impact on you? It wasn't the one who was the most perfect. It was the one that loved you the most and let you be yourself. And more than ever, that is what this generation wants. Let us create an environment where we can just be ourselves. And in that place, that's where real growth, that's where real transformation can take place. They don't want to be impressed by you, they just want to identify with you. The second one is this. This is more of a statement, I guess, than a request. They said, we know the difference between authentic and trying to be authentic.
Amen.
There's another one of those buzzwords, right? Authenticity, genuine, real. You see these words everywhere. You hear them all the time. Real knows real. And it is definitely a very big trend and a very big value. The thing about millennials, especially when it comes to leadership, is they know when you're trying to be authentic to reach them. Now, the reason they know this is because this is their life, right? So they know, they know this lifestyle of what reality looks like versus when you post it on Instagram and you add like 14 filters and you add your caption, and you have this perceived version of reality. That's their life, right? How many times have I posted a picture of Dustin and I, like 15 minutes after we got in a fight? Or I'm posting it and I'm writing a caption while we're currently in a fight. That's just me and him. It's like, oh, I love you so much, babe. And, you have the big heart and, people are commenting on my Instagram. They're like, oh my gosh, you guys are so cute. You're a match made in heaven. And little they know, we're fighting while I'm posting this picture of our love, right? Millennials know how to portray the reality they want you to see. They know how to give the reputation they want to have. Because they do it so much, they can smell it really easy when someone else does it. And that's one thing I think that they're asking us as leaders to be. They know the difference between trying to be authentic and just truly being yourself. Now, to be quite honest with you guys, this is a really challenging one for me. A lot of people in my ministry, they really just want to just see who you really are, right? They just want to see your true colors. Now, this is not exalting sin, like we want to see how bad you are. No, this is really just exalting vulnerability.
Amen.
Right? So we're not just waving our dirty laundry. You better tell your whole congregation all the sins you did this week, or else they're not going to follow you. That's not it. It's just about saying, hey, this is who I am. Not with the leadership hat on, not with the pastoral hat on. This is just who I am. And to be honest with you guys, this is hard for me. It's hard for me to be just kind of myself around those that I lead. For whatever reason, maybe that's because they're all looking to me as their example, right? Like I'm the leader, so like they must be following something, right? Or, I'm the example, right? So I better be an example in all these different things. Or maybe that's because, as leaders, we get hurt a lot. We have people who follow us and then stab us in the back. You're like, we're kind of like the sacrificial lamb of the church, right? Like, we're the ones who get hurt by the sheep. And so this is not an easy concept. And I think we have to realize that to truly be vulnerable with your sheep, I don't think it happens by default. And I think this is where we need the help of the Holy Spirit more than ever before, to let him kind of be our guide as far as when we need to kind of maybe be vulnerable and when we need to be guarded. Now, I do believe that guarded and fake are very different things. Obviously, we're never called to be fake, but I do think sometimes it is important to be guarded.
Yes.
Sometimes you do need to not share everything with everyone, and I do believe the Holy Spirit will let you know that. When to put your cards out there and when not to. And I think that if we can really hone in on this and realize that, yes, we are called to lead with vulnerability, and we're called to do that with the help of the Holy Spirit. I have one girl. She's in our ministry, and I've known her for quite a few years now, and I think she's about 8 years younger than me. And every time we meet, she wants me to meet, she wants me to be her pastor. Every time we meet, it starts like this every time. We sit down, and she asks me, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing great, yeah, having a great week, blah, blah. She looks at me and she goes, no, how are you really doing? Every time. This girl's 8 years younger than me, and she wants me to be her pastor. And I'm like, oh my, I'm doing good. No, I'm really doing good. It's multiple times. She goes, oh, Annalise, how you really doing? And what I realized with her is that she will not open up to me unless I open up to her first.
Right, yeah.
Now, this is kind of a funny thing, and I'm not saying I do this to everybody, but I kind of have felt kind of a nudge from the Holy Spirit, like, no, this is what she needs. She needs to see you be vulnerable first. You've known her for a few years now. She needs to see that from you, and if she sees that from you, she'll do it after you do. Now, she does it every time. I know everything about her that her counselor knows. But she needs to see me do it first. And I think this is actually a Bible concept. 1 Corinthians 9, 19 through 23. I'm sure you've all heard it, but it's Paul speaking to the Corinthians, and he says this: though I am free and belong to no one, I've made myself a slave to everyone, to win as many people as possible. To the Jews, I become like a Jew. To those under the law, I am like one under the law. To those who are not having the law, I become like those not having the law, so as to win those who not have the law. To the weak, I am weak. I have become all things to all people, that I might save some. I do this for the sake of the gospel. I love that Paul was not married to a methodology. Paul wasn't married to his leadership style that he believed was right. All he was married to was his passion to win the lost. And whatever it took, however that meant, whatever that looked like, even if he had to change his leadership style, God forbid, he was willing to do whatever it took if it meant reaching people. And I do believe this is what God asks of us as leaders. To have, not saying throw our methods or our philosophies or our leadership styles or our ideologies out the window, but to hold them with an open hand.
That's right.
And to be willing to put them on the shelf, maybe for a season, maybe just for one person, and to be whatever that person might need. You okay? Okay. They know the difference between authentic and trying to be authentic. Number 3 might strike you, actually, as a surprise. What is this? Millennials, they say this: we will follow strong leadership. We will. Even to a loyalty fault. but we will not follow dictatorship. Now, if you were in church in the 80s, you know this is quite a stark contrast. And now I don't mean, I hope I'm coming across right, I don't mean to bash the church of the 80s or of the 90s. I don't think that we're better. I don't think that was a negative thing. It's just different.
Yeah.
They will not follow dictatorship. Now, a lot of times this comes across as disrespect. And millennials get classified or categorized as being very disrespectful. What's funny is that I am a millennial, and this has struck a chord in me many times where I'm like, they just do not respect me. Or they do not respect leadership. That's not entirely true. The thing about millennials is they respect the person, but not the role. They do not respect the role or the office like they used to. Now again, I grew up in what you'd call maybe a charismatic or a Pentecostal church, yes, in the 90s. And this was very different, right? In the 90s, you only call someone by pastor so-and-so, or sister so-and-so, or brother so-and-so. Do you remember those times? Do you know what would happen to you if you referred to another guy in the church other than brother so-and-so? Oh my, you'd get your head bitten off. I mean, that would not fly 20, 30 years ago. Why? Because that's how we showed respect. And if someone had the role or the office, that means that they automatically earned the respect of the people in the church. This is not the case for millennials, and they do not respond to it. For them, respect is out of relationship. If they can get to know you, and if you can get to know them, they will respect you. Again, this kind of ties into the last one. If they can see your true colors, if they see you in a vulnerable spot, bam, that's almost it for them. If they can see you under pressure, if they can see you having a bad day, if they can see you doing the mundane, basic tasks, they'll respect you. So for us as leaders, what does that mean? It means we have to be okay with them not respecting us for our role. And we have to know that it's probably going to come after not only we've built relationship with them, but after we've shown them respect too. Now this might sound, I don't know, like that might sound like it's defeating the whole concept of respect, right? But get this. Jesus said in John 15:15, I no longer call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master's business is. Instead, I now call you friends. For everything that I have learned from the Father, I have made known to you. And this has really challenged me over the past few years, that if the Son of God can place himself as the same level as humans, I can place myself as the same level as those I'm leading. This is a humbling concept, especially if you've led in the 80s and then the 90s, where this wasn't that way. We just viewed it differently. Now that's not wrong, and this isn't necessarily the right way. But I do think that when we look at John 15:15, we see that Jesus Christ said, we're friends. It's equal playing field. Now there's this beautiful tension, right, where we're friends, but we have to fear him, right? And I do believe even in leadership today, as leading millennials, there is still that tension, right? Yes, we're friends, but yes, there still needs to be that respect. And I think in that mutual respect, that tension is supposed to kind of be there. So they will follow strong leadership. And this isn't a time to say, well, I'm not going to be a strong leader, I'm just going to be everybody's pal, right? No, that's not the case. You can tell them truth. In fact, they'll respect you more when you tell them truth. But the truth has to come out of a place of relationship. And my last point is this, or the last request, I suppose. They said this. They said, we like systems, but we don't want to be systematized. We like your systems, we do, but we don't want to be systematized. In other words, for us, it can't just be about the org chart. It can't just be about the structure. For us, we have to see how the structure, the organization, the system, the program has to show us that it's a means to an end, not just the end. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So contrary to popular belief, millennials aren't just about showing up to church and rolling around in the spirit and then, don't tell me what to do and don't tell me when to be there. They do actually want structure. They just want to see how it's a means to the end. And the end is reaching the lost. And so, as I close, I want to share with you guys one quote. William Arthur Ward says, "The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. And the realist just adjusts the sails." And I feel like as leaders in this next generation and with millennials who are coming up, yes, your youngest millennials are 20 years old. Your oldest are 36. This is your leadership team. These are the people who are going to be taking your church as the older generation moves out. This is the one that's coming in. And I do believe that one thing that not just is going to cause the church to win, but that Christ is really asking of us is to adjust our sails, to relook at how we do stuff, our methodology, our leadership style, our ideology. And the good news is this. It's very apparent when you look in the world today with the bombing in Manchester and the homosexual community, the transgender community, the LGBTQ, and letters just keep adding on to whatever it still is anymore. I don't even know. I'm probably behind the times. It's getting darker. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to make that observation. The world is getting darker, and it's getting darker at a rapid pace. And the good news for us is that the promise of God is that the church is going to get lighter. Amen? Amen? The church is going to get stronger. Christians are going to shine more. And the future of your church is that it will just continue to be more and more victorious. I believe it. It will continue to have a bigger impact. That I believe the next 10 years are going to be more impacting in the world than the past 10 years were. Not because that my generation is better than the previous ones, but just because that's the promise of God. That as the world gets darker and worse, the church is just going to continue to rise. And as we can adjust our sails, right? As we can adjust our thinking and just not just function or do business as usual, more and more people are going to come to Christ, are going to have transformed lives by the Holy Spirit, and the church will win. So thank you for having me this morning. That is what I have to share with you. And do you have any questions, maybe as to me being a millennial or to me leading a young adult ministry? Yeah.
I just wanted to know what you think about the difference between what I think the Gen Xers learned, what's in it for me, and maybe now the current means justify the end sort of thing, Machiavellian sort of style that millennials have.
So you're saying...
Is there a difference between what's in it for me and that Machiavellian ends justifies the means?
Okay, so I think what you're asking is, are they just looking, when it says the end justifies the means, are they just looking for how will it affect myself?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't believe so. I think I'd go back to the fact that they're so civic-minded, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So if I have to sacrifice for the sake of somebody else, I'm okay with that, right? If I have to wear ugly, uncomfortable shoes so that a kid in Africa can have another pair of ugly, uncomfortable shoes, that's worth it, right? Mm-hmm. If we have to sacrifice or give or do whatever, it's not that the means has to benefit me, mm-hmm. but it has to benefit somebody.
Something.
Yes, mm-hmm. Very justice oriented. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a 41-year-old father of two, pastoring in a church, and I want to engage millennials. And I sort of understand Facebook as being sort of the family dinner that everyone has to be at and is at, and Instagram seems very successful. But is my involvement and seeking to be involved in Snapchat, am I like dad trying to deliver a poorly delivered rap line? Or is it awkward, or is that something welcomed and appropriate? My involvement in Snapchat.
Well, actually, Snapchat is on its way out.
Yeah.
So you are in good news for everyone. Yeah, Snapchat is potential. That's word on the street that most millennials are going back to Instagram. But I know the heart of your question, right? If you're a millennial and you're using, if you're not a millennial and you're using things that millennials use, is that the awkward dad? I'm going to answer this personally, if that's okay. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. My boss at the Bible college is, what is he, 66?
Yeah.
And is on social media all the time. I love it. I feel like he's trying to connect.
Speaking of language.
I don't know that he feels awkward doing it. So for all of you guys, you know, and yes, that is true. Facebook is your mom's social media, right? So that's what we know it as. It's the social media for moms and for your grandma, so that they can share all their stuff. With that being said, we all still check it every day because God forbid we're not distracted from what's actually in front of us, right? How ironic is that? But no, to answer your question, if you are not a millennial and you are using things like Snapchat or Instagram or whatever it might be, I don't think, and I'm speaking for myself right now, that we perceive you as like, oh, come on, you know, yes, the awkward dad with the dad joke. I think really it's like, oh, okay, yeah, they're using what we use. They're connecting with us just like normal life, and we don't know the difference. Does that make sense? I don't know how I'm doing on time.
You're good.
I'm good? Okay.
Take a couple more questions.
Couple more, okay. Got a mic coming to you, yeah.
Yeah, what is City Bible doing specifically? Are there any key strategies they're doing to connect the older generation? Because Bible's been around a long time, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of older folks. How are they making the connection between the old way and the new way? Is there anything specifically that you're targeting?
Are you referring to like leadership, like methodologies, or?
Yeah, something specific that you are. I know Mark is just a great leader.
He is.
And I'm just curious if there's something, any specifically nugget that you would give that you're doing for that.
I don't think we have it figured out, to be honest with you. Mark might, but I certainly don't. I want to make sure I'm answering your question right. When it comes to, you know, young adults, and when it comes to even our young adult ministry, right, which our young adult ministry, even 15 years ago, we considered young adults to be 18 to 24.
Yeah.
Young adults is now 18 to 35. That's our young adult ministry. 35-year-olds come to our young adult ministry. Why? Because they're all single and they all still live with their parents. It's true. It's true. I got to encourage all of them last week because we're going through, in our young adult ministry, we're going through a study on the life of Jesus right now. And I said, you know, so Jesus at 30 years old, he starts his career. Be encouraged. You can now relate to Jesus in another way. He didn't start his career till 30. So you're doing good. Don't worry. But I know we've adjusted in the sense of how we approach them. We don't view, when it comes to millennials, we do not approach them based on their age. We approach them based on their stage. So a lot of our ministries are not structured around age as much as it is stage. What I mean by that is we'll have a ministry for young families. It's not 30 to 40-year-olds. Does that make sense? Or we have a ministry for college students. Now, a college student is 18 to 28, right? We have someone who's getting their master's degree, and their context of life is the same as the 18-year-old who's in his undergrad. Or you'll have someone who's 22 and has a family. So the lines have just been blurred. I don't know if that answers your question, but we're looking at this age group a lot more of not like an age group, but what's your stage of life and how do we reach out to you in that stage? Answers your question? Yeah.
I hear you talking mostly about.
There's a mic coming to you.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
I hear you talking mostly about people who might be considering maybe going to school, but the majority of children or young adults in these age brackets tend to be stuck, and they can't move forward, and they don't have tools to do it with, and they don't want to listen to people who have moved into the life in society to have been able to hold jobs, provide for their family. So now we have to reach, and a lot of these people are in our very own families. They're still stuck. They're not moving forward because of their ideals and their emotional selves being fed. So I feel like this is a really hard concept to me, kind of the way it's being approached here, because we're sort of talking about people that might be considered even coming to church. But these people don't even think about coming to church. They don't think about Jesus. They're not on that plane. They're into what tragedy's happening with their friend's life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we engage them in that and be in our church at the same time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think to that, when talking to unchurched millennials, right? One thing that they still really want is they still want community. They're very, very lonely because most of their social life is on their phone, and the quality of relationships has decreased drastically. And so I think if they can see the church genuinely cares about them, that's what they really need. Now, it might take a long time for them to come to Christ. Dustin and I have a couple who, Harley and Cassie, I don't know how long it's been, over a year. They come to church every single week, and they have not yet accepted Christ into their hearts. But they come every week, and we've had the conversations, right? We're praying for them, we're doing all this stuff, and they come every week. But they won't yet make the decision, and we're trying to be patient. But for them, they just want someone to love them and to care about them. And because that's so rare now, they recognize it. And so I don't know if this answers your question. And I mean, please know, like, we are young in when it comes to leadership. We've only been leading for 2 years, young adults. But so far, what we've seen that works the best is if they can see that you're more interested in them than their church attendance. That's right. Then you've got them, right? So if I only text someone to say, hey, come to church with me, they're like, no thanks. Hey, you want to come over to my house? That's a whole other thing. And if you can build that, I think they'll come to your living room way before they'll come to your church. Yeah. Whereas it used to be the opposite, right? That was kind of weird. Like, oh, come over? I'll see you at church. You know what I mean? It's totally swapped, I think. Where I think they're willing to come over. They're willing to let you cook dinner for them because they're poor, right? They have no money. And if we can build relationship with them, I do think then they will come to church because they'll see, this is who cares about me. Does that make sense? Okay. You in the back, you've had your hand up the whole time. I'm so sorry. I feel bad. It's been a long time.
You know, we millennials, we can wait.
That's right. It's good for us. It's good for us.
I'm trying to let this keep going because I know there's more speakers, but you've been nailing it. I've been sitting back here with Pastor's sister, and so much of what you've said is the complications that both my wife and I have had being millennials and trying to convey the message that's being spoken today. But one of the biggest things to attract millennials in terms of getting them involved with church is the education components of the Bible. It's not the hoopla, the hoorahs, the laying out, the running, the sit down, don't chew your gum, don't talk. Teach me about Christ. Teach me what it means to have a relationship with Him, and make sure that your message lines up with what the Word of God is saying, because we are very good at information these days, us millennials. We know how to connect the dots. We know how to connect the dots, trace it back, bring it forward, and explain where we're at right now. And if the people in the generation before us have tradition and forums that does not line up to where we're going and where we see the Bible's moving, we don't trust you, we don't believe you, and we are not impressed with you. So just want to
feel free to send all your questions to him. You really want an answer. You want to take this one? I'm being serious. I really am. Izzy?
Yeah. So my question is, you actually made a statement that kind of is somewhat scary in that you mentioned that millennials aren't attracted to roles, or the issue with roles, and respecting that. And so again, that to me is kind of personally is a somewhat of a hot topic, but I want to, I'm curious, is that, in terms of clarity, is that role, I kind of define it as a position, like someone just like, you mentioned like bro, whoever, sister, so-and-so, you know, like that's their position versus what I believe, you know, God has kind of ordained a mother role, a father role, those types of things. So that's where the rub for me kind of comes. Can you?
Unfortunately, it's both. So most of us grew up in broken families, right? We're the fatherless generation. It's really hard. It's really hard right now to preach God the Father, because half the time that's a negative connotation. Hey, don't worry, God's your father. Well, then I want nothing to do with him. Like it is. It kind of. I mean, I agree with you. It is scary, right? It is a scary concept in that we can no longer just say God's your father. because that does not mean a good thing anymore for most people. It means a distant God. It means a God who walks out on me. It means an abusive God. It means a careless God. It means a God who, well, my dad cheated on my mom. Like that is their context, right? Another thing is that our first president was immoral. That was our first president, right? So we're fatherless, and the first political leader we ever saw kind of screwed up a little bit, right? A little publicly. So no, that's, yeah, the early 90s, if you know. I don't want to like bash I don't want to bash anybody right now, but no, not here, no politics. I did not mean to make a political statement, but I don't want to get political. My point is just this: we've seen political systems fall; those roles have fallen. We've seen the family unit fall, and what that means, and spiritual leaders, right? So for us, your role doesn't mean much until you can prove to me that you are the real deal, right? Like I don't care that you're a pastor, because you might be blah, 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 or who knows, that's what happened to my youth pastor, whatever it might be, whatever their context is. It's not just the role, but they will respect the person. Yeah. So again, it's the misconception is that they just don't respect at all, right? There's no respect there. Yeah. And I think the reality is that they want to respect the character of the man. I think that's closer to being the church as it should be. I really do, So, yeah.
So is it more respect the person first, then the role? Is that more what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't really think the role has a huge part in it. I really don't. I think, obviously Jesus said, the greatest of these must be the lesser, right? So the greatest leader of all is really the biggest servant. And I think millennials expect us to actually walk that out, right? Like, if you're the lead guy, you're less than all of us here, right? And for many years that wasn't necessarily how it actually was. And that's not a leadership problem. That's probably that's a cultural thing, right? So that's no means to say anything negative. I just think millennials kind of expect that to be true. Yeah. That if you're my leader, you're here to serve me. Yeah. Now, again, they're narcissistic, so they want everyone to serve them, right? They're the selfie generation. But I guess what I'm saying is I think, like you said, that respect is just out of relationship. Title, no title. They'll respect, if the homeless man on the street shows them some love, they'll respect, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like equal playing field in that sense, which I think Jesus modeled that.
Can millennials and generations overlap? Because I see some of me being generation X and some of me being this new thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm very rebellious to old structures.
Sure.
I grew up in church where you better respect that pastor, you better respect everybody, boom, boom, boom. But I cry out, like, if they don't show the walk, like Christ said, I don't want to follow them. I will be in the background and say, I'll wait for a leader who's going to actually do the walk, the talk, and actually build relationships.
Yeah. So your question is, can we overlap? And I say absolutely. I probably should be very cautious here. My entire sermon is one big stereotype. That's right. So, by definition, I'm doing the one thing that millennials hate, right? This is a 4-page stereotype. That's horrible. So yes, so yes, you're right. There is a lot of overlap in that. And even while you were talking, I thought about what Paul said. He says that respect all people as being greater than yourself. And I think that millennials want to do that. I do believe they want to live that out. They want to respect the senior pastor as being greater than themselves, and they want to expect the 12-year-old punk kid as being greater than them. At least they want to try. At least that's their heart. And yes, there's a lot of overlap, I think. What you guys have to really get ready for is Generation Z. Yeah. Now they are a whole other animal for another session, okay? Yeah. But are we done here? Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
know I saw lots of hands. You guys are gonna get mad because you can't ask all your questions, but that's why you have all that material in front of you. You can write down your questions. Annalise is gonna be here all day. So catch her on a break, catch her at lunch, do what you need to do. I know you have lots of questions, but how many of you would agree that that session alone was worth the price of admission? Just that one. In fact, I would have spent twice that just to do